You're not here because your body is failing. You're here because it's taking up more time and attention than it should. You've eaten breakfast, and by late morning, your stomach just doesn't feel right. And when you sit down in front of your project management tool, your week is already mapped out for you, and you went to bed early, but it's still taking longer than it should for your brain to get going. So in the back of your mind, you're thinking about what you ate, when you ate, and whether you need to change something in your routine or your diet or everything else again. And this is usually where discipline becomes the answer. Be more consistent, be more careful, stay on top of things. And if discipline were the issue, this would be when things would start working again, but they don't. And that's not failure. That's just information that you've been trying to manage instead of trying to understand. Welcome to the Decode Your Body podcast. I'm your host, Tasha Miller. This podcast is for female founders who won't allow their body to slow execution or consume unnecessary time and attention. Leadership starts here. You are the CEO of your body. Today, we are talking about discipline, not because you don't have it, but because it's probably the tool that you keep reaching for when something in your body stops responding the way it used to. And this isn't about doing less, and it's not about letting things slide. It's about what happens when discipline becomes the default response to information you haven't stopped to question yet. Because when something stops working in your business, you don't just force it even more. You step back and you look at what changed. And this is the work I do with founders when discipline isn't the issue anymore, but interpretation is. So I made this mistake in my own business when I first started out, and I didn't see it at first. On paper, the model worked. There were many people that were successful inside of it, and the structure made sense. And it was positioned as a freedom-filled business. So I assumed that the discomfort to me meant that I just needed to adjust myself, become more available, stay more plugged in, hold more momentum. But what made it obvious wasn't that the model was hard. It was that it required a version of me that I was not willing to become. One where my days were constantly being fragmented, where I was always having to plan, and where everything depended on me being the business and staying on all the time. And I remember thinking, well, if success only works when my nervous system stays activated and dysregulated, that's not freedom, even if it looks good from the outside. And as a wife, mother, and work from home entrepreneur, to me, honestly, not acceptable. And that's when I realized that nothing was wrong with my work ethic or my discipline. The structure didn't fit how I actually live or how I want to show up day after day. So instead of pushing harder, I stopped and I questioned the business model itself. And I rebuilt around what I could sustain without my body and nervous system having to suffer consequences all the time. And it doesn't mean that I don't work my tail off, but that's when things started working again. Not because I tried harder, but because I stopped forcing myself into something that required constant management just to keep going. Now, the problem is when your body stops responding the way it used to, you assume you need more discipline. You don't question the approach, you question yourself. You assume that you're falling off the wagon or that you're missing something or that you need to pay closer attention. So you double down, you get stricter with food, you refine your schedule again, you monitor things more closely than before, not because you're reactive, but because responsibility has always worked for you until it doesn't. What you're calling a discipline problem isn't actually about effort. It's information. Your body, it's not resisting you, it's responding differently. And the misstep is treating that response like an error instead of something worth analyzing. The lens that I use is simple. Symptoms aren't problems. They're clues that something has changed in our body. We're used to analyzing metrics in our business, but we rarely apply the same thinking to our body. So you're not failing at discipline, you're just ignoring the information that is being shown to you. And the more you manage your symptoms and your body instead of understanding it, the more time and capacity it takes up in your day, more monitoring, more mental load, more second guessing, and probably more Googling symptoms and how to fix them. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because the approach that you're using assumes a body that isn't operating the same way anymore. Now, when something in your business stops working, you don't push harder forever. You pause. You look at what changed. You look at what the system is responding to now, not what used to work 6 months ago. You don't micromanage every detail. You simply reassess the structure that you've built. And your body deserves that same approach. Not constant refinement, not more control, just a different way of paying attention. Because when something starts taking more effort just to maintain the same result, that's not something to overlook. That's something to investigate. And leadership isn't about forcing consistency at any cost. It's about knowing when the system has shifted and responded accordingly. And that's the difference between managing and leading your body. So instead of asking, what do I need to be more disciplined about? Ask, what is taking more effort than it used to? And that question alone changes the whole perspective because you already know how to be consistent and how to follow through. But what you haven't been taught to notice is when the same effort starts costing more attention, more energy, more planning, and honestly, more decision fatigue. That's not a signal to buckle down even more. That's your body telling you something has changed in how it's responding. And once you see that, you stop blaming yourself, arguing with yourself, assuming that you're the problem. You start looking and listening for what actually shifted. And that's the difference between reacting and responding when it comes to your body. Now, if this was your business, you'd already see it. If something suddenly needed more checking, more fixing, more attention just to keep it running, you wouldn't just keep pushing through. You'd say, okay, something's changed. But with your body, you've actually been doing the opposite. You've been watching it more, managing it more, trying to stay on top of it. And that's why discipline hasn't helped. Not because you lack the follow-through, but because you're trying to manage a change instead of understand it. And if discipline hasn't been the issue for a while, the next step isn't increasing effort. It's learning how to read what your body's responding to so you're not constantly adjusting. And that's the work behind Body CEO, which is coming in early 2026. And if you're ready to become a leader of your body, instead of just managing it and fixing those symptoms and truly understanding it, then you will want to be on my newsletter, which is where the details will be shared at tashamiller.co/newsletter. The link will also be down in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week as we enter into 2026. I will see you back here next week. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, tap follow and leave a 5-star review down below. I read every single one and it helps more women find this podcast. If you want to keep the conversation going, head to tashamiller.co for resources, offers, and all the ways to connect with me.